I did not realize that one of my nephews actually went to Embry-Riddle. He was a enlisted master sergeant in the United States Air Force. And yeah, there you go. I see some people got those thumbs up. Alumni. So he calls me up. He goes, Unc, I just saw that you're going to be doing something at my alma mater. I said, what? You went to school there? Antoine Warren was a master sergeant in the United States Air Force. He's now working with a company out of Newport News as a path project manager with things that float in the water. So in any event, he contributes his success to his education in aeronautics, his 4-year degree from Embry-Riddle. And that was absolutely fantastic. I was so happy to hear that. I said, oh, a small world. So kudos to Embry-Riddle and helping this enlisted man. And he's doing quite well, doing very well with that education.
Wonderful. We are proud to serve those who serve, and we mean it. It's not just jargon for us, so it's very important. So thank you for sharing that, Michael. That's great. And that's a great segue for me, because obviously this is another edition of Resiliency Reimagined. Your favorite dean's favorite speaker series. I'm, you guessed it, the dean of the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences. In Resiliency Reimagined, we don't want to spend a lot of time defining resilience. We know the National Preparedness Goal says that's really the end state of the Homeland Security Vision, contribute to a whole community effort to foster preparedness in order to achieve a resilient nation. And we also have an online program in human security and resilience. If you want to check it out, here's the link, but please save it for later, because we do not want to drive your attention away from today's speaker. And it is important to, everybody talks about infrastructure, supply chain resilience, but it's important to really start where it starts, and that's the community level. And the whole community approach continues to be a lot of value. And that's why I'm so excited that we have you here, Michael. This, whatever it is, for us it's noon, but we are worldwide, and it's morning and afternoon and night somewhere. So good day to all. And let's welcome our speaker, Dr. Michael Brown, who is the president of the nonprofit Policy Institute, One World, One Way. This Policy Institute provides consultation on emergency operations plans, business continuity plans for private public industry, conducts lectures and presentations on disaster emergency management, homeland security, counter-terrorism, critical infrastructure protection, a lot, and social equity. And it promotes, building that resilient nation based on the National Preparedness Goal. But you could see that, Michael has obviously some favor for the Air Force, and that's great. And because he served in the United States Air Force as a combat crew member, nuclear weapons officer, intelligence operations specialist, and also executive support officer, brings a lot of experience, also leadership to the table here today. Also being the co-author of the book, Transforming Disaster Response, Federalism and Leadership, and Environmental Justice and Resiliency in an Age of Uncertainty. He is talking about building resilient and sustainable communities using a national preparedness system, social equity, whole community-centered approach, and BRIC, where BRIC is the baseline resilience indicators for communities. So without further ado, thanks, Michael, for speaking today. Thanks, everybody, for joining. If you have any questions along the way, please feel free to already leave them on the chat. And we will, towards the end of the session, have open Q&A at any rate. Michael, please take it away. Thanks again.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir, for that introduction. Miss McManus, do me a favor, because I like to talk. So keep me up. Please keep me on point, because I have quite a few slides that I'm going to share with us. We're going to get through these slides, and hopefully I'll be able to answer the questions. So let's go ahead and start this presentation. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, folks. We're going to be talking about building resilience and sustainability in communities. And mainly we're talking about how we can implement the concept of social equity within this process. Again, thoughts and prayers to those we've lost. You heard me speak about this earlier, some of the things that I'd like you to get out of the presentation. We have to embrace the idea of adaptive capacity. And this is extremely important because people do not like change. There's a lot of partners that are involved in this function. And I want to point out that the National Preparedness System, this document, is a living document predicated upon our imagination, our innovation, and our improvisation. As long as we can do that, we can continue the road towards a path of resilience. We have to remember that we've got to come out of the box. FEMA is undergoing an evolution, in my opinion, not seen since James Lee Witt. A lot of you professionals out there remember him during the Clinton era when he introduced the idea of mitigation. Wow, there's an idea, mitigation, something that most of us within the communities, government, nonprofits, we haven't embraced it enough to understand that that saves us time, money, and resources. And right now we're undergoing a transformation with FEMA right now that is bringing us into that fold through funding of grants, and also providing the necessary resources that we need. Going forward, we're going to have to make sure that we, because of the climate change issues, because of all the things we're trying to do in resiliency, we've got to make sure that there's more effective oversight of funding as we continue to move forward. We're witnessing an actual change agent in FEMA's approach. That's unheard of. That's why I got down here to say what? Right. Moving along, National Preparedness Directorate, a part of this integral part of the FEMA family, but also a part of the overall theme for making sure that the national preparedness system works, is now changing their culture and undergoing changes. They're going to have to change their culture. They're going to have to, with moving towards the idea and the concept of resilience being the forefront to our future security and safety in this country. That means the training that I receive going to some of the conferences and some of the training for the Center for Domestic Preparedness, the training will be a little different for the customers going forward in the future. It'll be geared more towards mitigation, which is a positive thing. There will be realignments that we see that we'll probably see in IC, in the Incident Command System and in NIMS through the National Integration Center. Bureaucracies hate change. Get over it. Change is not always bad. The idea of bringing in new blood and new ideas is not always accepted by people in bureaucracies or even in businesses. But there will be changes. There'll be changes in EMI, as I noted, changes in the CDP, and changes in the national training and education. There has to be. There has to be these changes because the focus is now turned. No longer is FEMA just acting reactive and responsive to disasters. They're actually saying, well, let's fix this thing and provide the funding to sustain it. That makes sense. But doing such a thing will require new skill sets, new equipment, new supplies, because we're dealing with the climate change and the challenges related to it, and it will necessitate retyping and other human resources. But these investment in resources will pay off. But it's still complex. The outcomes. As the national preparedness system moves forward, I won't read it to you because I know everybody here is as bright as me. You can read this. But one thing is extremely important. We are all responsible for this path. Disasters, crises, emergencies, they're all local. They start and begin with us. So we got to be patient and understand that the success moving forward with building more resilient infrastructure begins with us. Now, as our partners do that, Department of Health, Army Corps of Civil Engineers, as they do that, the communities themselves will begin to trust. Excuse me. The definition of resilience. I personally have a problem with that. That's going to have to change. Resilience, like vulnerability, the term vulnerability, has over 125 definitions, according to Blanchard, 2007. We've got to narrow the definition of resilience down. Anticipated hazards, how about all hazards? Rapidly recover, that sounds very much like a qualifier. Rapidly, what's rapidly? You know, one community's resources and their needs and the way that they recover is going to be different than another as far as resilience is concerned. National Preparedness System whole community approach and the national preparedness goals. A lot of you are already familiar with these, the 32 core capabilities, and the whole community approach, which is an intricate part of making all this work. The whole community approach attempts to engage the capacity and basically bring all of the players, all of us, our American tribal brothers, our American territorial brothers and sisters, and all of the communities, faith-based organizations, all together. And I will add organizations that are focused and dedicated. I have been able to come into contact with organizations like Build Strong and organizations that are invested in building homes, green homes and small homes and other locations, facilities that will help us moving forward with brand new ideas. Preparedness is a shared responsibility. So I say rack it up. Be responsible, accountable, and committed. And this will help the whole community moving forward. The National Preparedness System is a cyclical system comprising of all of these. But notice I have assessment in red. The THIRA, or social vulnerability assessments, which are sometimes done to find out exactly what's wrong, what we really need to focus on, so we can prioritize what it is that we need to do. Is it going to be flooding because of where we're located? Is it going to be drought? Is it going to be heat? Regardless. Is it technological? Because I live near a train track, like in Ohio, and a couple of accidents have happened there. Is it going to be a human-made issue where I might be susceptible to terrorism and so forth and so on? This is extremely important. You got to get the assessment right. The other 6 are just as important, but the assessment, how you assess something, is going to determine what resources you're going to need and how much moolah you're going to need in order to move forward and do it. I want you to think at this point, I want you to think about Jackson, Mississippi water crises. Take a moment just to think about that based on what I just said about assessments, because I'm curious. The all-seeing eyes, this is a thing I came up with years ago when I was teaching. The all-seeing eyes, you know, improvisation, innovation, and imagination, extremely important. FEMA will have to better establish the role in the path going forward using that. You do that by bringing in new blood, by accepting ideas that you may not have wanted to accept before, to expand the possibilities of success. Definitions are extremely important. As I stated before, I am not comfortable with the definition of resilience as it stands right now, because definitions will guide your research. If the definition is too broad, then it lends itself to issues and problems with research. Narrowing that definition down and owning it is extremely important, because we do research for what? We do research in order to guide policy. Extremely important. At the very last, you'll see I have the word will for politicians in blue because that's blue sky. They will embrace. I'm not sure that'll happen, but we'll see. National preparedness goals, there's definition there. Basically, we want to ensure that we can recover and that we have all the necessary things that we need in order to address hazards and threats. Again, this particular definition also needs to be looked at and probably tweaked. Notice that with the core capabilities of mission areas, I have response highlighted. I've selected that one because initially when we first get into the preparedness issue, or we have landfall from tornado, from a hurricane or issue, response, boom. That's where all of your emergent individuals that will help you come out. That's where the rubber meets the road. Looking at response and looking at its core capabilities underneath it, I want to note something that's extremely important in most challenges when we deal with disasters: transportation. I have the environment here because the environment and where you're located and where you're going is extremely important. Logistical management. Now, if you're looking at these, I just want you to think of COVID and what we just recently went through with the idea of transportation, with the environment, with logistical supply chain management, and the situational assessments, housing. All of these, I think, are very key. So how do we integrate what I think is necessary, social equity, within the idea of response or emergency operations planning? How do we get it in there? Well, these are criteria: procedural fairness, access, and quality. Of course, then I've got critical transportation, environmental supply. I got those ones listed that I had in response. So what I'm suggesting here is maybe we need to make sure that there's fairness in each one of these activities. 5% of Americans back in 2000 census used public transit. I don't even need to go into this because we know, even anecdotally, if you don't have the numbers, because I can quote numbers all day, and that's fine in statistics, we know that the majority of persons that use our transit systems are Americans of color and persons of lower incomes, and so in urban areas. I say that Katrina, 80% of the individuals that lived in that area did not have cars. But I want you to think about this. I have this slide here for a reason, a couple of reasons, but just look at that picture. FEMA can't do it all. Department of Health can't do it all. Neither can the government. We have to do it ourselves. What could have been done with those buses? I put to you that if you can use school buses to deliver meals during the COVID pandemic, that coming out of the box and using imagination, innovation, improvisation, you probably could have used those buses to help remove some of the people that were in those areas in New Orleans. Let's move on. Maui. Being responsible, accountable, and committed. I can't get through to the roads, but I'll find a way to get supplies to the people I need. That's resilience. That's a part of the whole community. That's what we want. We want that. Don't wait for me. Show me how to do it, and I will give you the funding. Make it work. Part of the whole community. Beautiful. A pillar of social equity. Most of us have heard about this. The Justice Initiative. I won't read it to you. You have it here. But it's trying to address climate change. Anybody remember this fellow? This is Harvey. What a monstrosity. But because of climate change, his cousins and his future grandchildren hover. They don't move like they used to. Now, I won't debate whether or not there's climate change or not. The mere fact that it happened means we need to address it. They're sitting there, they're hovering, and they're dropping enormous amounts of water. And that's the result. We're seeing it even today as I'm sitting here. What? 31 days? I'm sure we've heard of this. This is from not being mindful of zoning. This is not being mindful of how we should build moving forward in the future. We need to address these issues now, because that's why Houston flooded. Not just because they didn't build a third levee, but also because there was a whole lot of concrete. And of course, we're experiencing extreme fires and droughts. I won't go into that. We'll move on. We're seeing it everywhere. Social equity is the fourth pillar of public administration, and it contains the following in order to address prejudices and so forth. Can social equity be used for what it is that I'm suggesting we use it for? Of course. How can we use it? Procedural fairness means the actions and the steps you're taking. How transparent are you? Is what you're doing equitable? Does it stand up to due process? Is it fair? Access. Are you providing the same opportunities when you do an emergency operations plan or you do an evacuation plan? Are you taking into account that maybe perhaps 60 or 70% or a large part of your population of the whole community, your responsibility, that they do not have access to vehicles, and that perhaps the plan needs to include a way for them to have access? Quality. When you're processing damage reports, or if you're providing water, or if you're looking at building in areas where there may have been redlining or discriminatory practices, or even providing COVID vaccine, what's the quality of what you're providing and outcomes? Go back, look at your after action reports, your hot washes, and your lessons learned, and what you did and what you didn't do, and be introspective and think to yourself, what could I have done? Is what we did when we did what we did fair, equitable? That's how you can apply these to the national preparedness system, the national preparedness goals in their areas. Ensure that when you do look at critical transportation, is it procedurally fair? Are you treating the environment fairly? Remember, equal is not equitable. Equality doesn't mean being equitable. As you can see, everybody has the same box. They can't get the fruits. If you do not, as an emergency manager, as a person responsible for the safety and security of our American citizens, if you do not approach it from a position of equity, being fair, then your perspective and even your end product is probably going to be skewed. Now, this is an interesting picture. I can't say it is one of my proudest moments. Recently, when I was at ResCon 2023, which was a wonderful, wonderful event, as you can see, that's the top of my head, but everybody gets this podium. Yeah, that's right. Everybody gets the same podium. It's equal. but I could not see the crowd over it. Not something I'm proud of. But I can tell you, even though I'm short, I cast a big shadow. All I had to do was say, where's my box? But in any event, I jumped down and I went and did what I like to do, a Socratic interactive approach. I'm back to Justice 40 under the Executive Order 1408. As you can see down here, as you continue to read it, talks about providing even it includes even water to disadvantaged communities. Whoa, BRIC, not that BRIC. And I might add, not the BRIC that's going on with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, where they're meeting right now. Not that BRIC either, if you stay abreast of your news and what's going on in the world today. I won't belittle this. I provided links because I think that Ms. McManus is going to make this presentation available to each one of you. BRIC can be very complicated. I read it, I looked at it, I tried to understand and delve into the different issues with regards to grants and so forth. I would suggest that you, when you go to the website, it's very, very well done. They have contacts within the state that you can reach out to. And they do one thing that I hadn't seen in government agencies that FEMA has really reached out. They're saying, you reach out to me, tell me what it is that we can do and what you need, what you want. They're asking you to contribute, to belong. And that's unusual. These are just a part of what BRIC covers and does. So we'll continue to move on. Need to get through here. Community approach. Embrace and integrate social equity within it. I spoke about this. Folks, if you remove any part of the social equity criteria from a community, you have weakened that community and you've probably disadvantaged and made some of your citizens, affected some of your citizens in a negative manner. Jackson, Mississippi. Now, the question is, they have an issue with their water system, have had for some years. The question, if I did a THIRA, if I did a threat hazard identification risk analysis assessment, where would I put it? Is it a natural disaster? Is it technological, human-made crisis? What is it? I put to you that a lot of what we're experiencing today, particularly in this climate change environment, is anthropogenic. We're not watching what we're doing. We're not following the guidelines for codes for building. We're overbuilding. We're not greening. We're not using new ideas and thinking about the future long term. A lot of what we're doing is based on bad decision making by decision makers. Hold their feet to the fire going forward. I didn't say it in this presentation, but I'm going to say it now. The greatest form of mitigation is voting. Wow, I think that's it. I got through it faster than I thought. McManus she didn't even get on. That's great. I'm going to stop sharing. Let's move on. Booyah! There you go.
Wonderful, Michael. So dynamic and insightful. That is great. And I'm looking forward to a great discussion here. And what you can do is you can ask your questions and some feedback, also leave feedback in the chat, and some is already coming in. Or you can also ask for the mic, and then Brianna can open that for you. But we have one question from our colleague here. So we have internal and external participants, but from a faculty colleague here, in the chat from Janice Amos. And her question is it very hard to get different groups to agree on the definitions of key indicators? Do you think this is even possible?
It is hard. it's difficult because we all come from different cultures and we all have different experiences. But I'll give you a perfect example. When it floods in Memphis or Nashville, oh my God, what the heck? If it floods in Bangladesh, the village picks up and moves and then comes back and becomes a fishing community. They treat the event differently because of the historical antecedents that they're used to. I will say to your colleague, and I want Dr. Amos to think about this. When there were riots in Ferguson, it was unbelievable what happened there. Black man dies and everybody loses their mind. Charleston, South Carolina, one of the most prestigious churches, African-American congregants die there, but no rioting. It's different depending on your history and your lived experiences. The question is, that's rich research sitting there for us to delve into and find out why. And that's why I'm excited about the Emergency Management Institute, because this is going to open up a lot of connections with HBCUs and new research into resiliency. I love it.
Thank you. And next question, please. So on the chat or... Who wants to be next? This is a great opportunity.
I'll ask another question if I might.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you for speaking up. Yeah.
So Maui, let's look at Maui. Everyone is so angry that there wasn't this huge emergency response immediately. And in my mind, logically, I'm saying 80-mile-an-hour winds can't really bring a boat in, can't land a plane. There's nothing, the infrastructure is gone. I think that expecting an immediate response, like in hours, is probably human, but not possible.
Right. I think that your view is a good one. But in the industry itself, it's not, in emergency management, it's not if it happens, it's when it happens. And the whole idea is to prepare for the uns, the unexpected, the unimaginable, the unthinkable. That's what mitigation does. And that's what being advised. When Hawaii had a nuclear earlier and the alarm system went off, that's a ha moment. When California had their fires, this is what it means to reach out and to coordinate and talk to other regional workers and members. How did you handle that? This might happen. There were some people within the Maui and Lahaina communities that had already raised their voices, but you know what? They weren't given a seat at the table. Everyone has to have a seat at the table, even if I don't want to hear what you have to say. And if there's not enough chairs, then take those bricks that I showed you and build a bench.
Excellent points. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very well said. And John Griffiths is just chiming in. Tracy, and I see your hand up. So, but John Griffiths just added to the point that ambulances and first responders have limits where then they have to cease their operations. For example, can't drive with winds over a certain number of mph, so like 50 ambulances typically don't run, and they can't cross bridges and according to their standard operating procedures. And there's also a question from Deborah, but Tracy, you're first. Go ahead, please.
Hi, Dr. Brown, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm not in the emergency management profession, but I felt like the the indicators, the procedural fairness, access and quality really could be used also in other areas. So this got me really thinking about some of the things that I'm working on with the affordable, accessible housing piece. So, and so taking these pieces back to my team with programming that I'm looking to develop and research that I'm doing through Capella. Full disclosure, Dr. Brown was one of my professors. I felt like this was really a great thing for me to attend today, because this does not just pertain to a natural disaster. I can say in New York State, we have a crisis of not enough housing for individuals with developmental disabilities. Different
Tracy,
kind of emergency, different kind of crisis, but I feel like these 3 points can be used to provide a fair and equitable system. Thank you.
Tracy, great points. And it's good to see you. And I want you to remember this group. I want you to get in touch with Frank Wells at Bright Community Trust, because he and his group are reaching out and doing exactly what it is you're talking about, and working with HUD and working with housing and other areas. And tell him Dr. Brown sent you. Reach out, connect, and I want to hear from you the results of what you've done. And I want you to, have you gotten to your dissertation phase yet?
I just got approved through the IRB for my research.
Outstanding. You can do it. Make it happen.
Thanks, Tracy, and Michael, for further encouraging Tracy. That's great. And while we are talking, questions come in here in the chat. And Deborah Bordeaux is actually not only a colleague, but also our Associate Dean for Student Success and Academics. So, and she is asking, and that connects to what you were already alluding to with emphasizing community experiences, prior experience, and ways of life, if we will. So, Deborah's question: what role do you think cultural factors play in both perceiving risk and preparing for a disaster?
Lindell and Perry and several others, you can reach out. There have been lots of research on the perception of risk. Different races and ethnic groups perceive risk differently. So it plays a big part. And as an example, if FEMA or a group are driving in their vehicles in a community with their sirens going, with a bullhorn warning the community that they need to evacuate, that for whatever reason, if you do that in a Latina or a Latinx community, forget about it. It's not going to happen. They don't trust you. If you do it in an American, persons of color, African American community, I'll listen to my pastor and trust them. I'll have to rethink whether or not I need to trust you or not. If you do it in a white community, which way do I go? Which way do I go? They're gonna go. There's trust. But that's based on the antecedents and the history of the country. Not to say that it's wrong, it's just the way things are. What can we do? Understand the nature of a thing. Continue to read, open our minds, and be receptive to things that we don't like. You know, if I sit and listen to CNN or MSNBC and never listen to Fox News, I'm going to have a pretty slanted view of things. If I refuse to read all literature, empirical literature provided to me, then I am not a scholar.
Thank you. So next question comes from Jeremy Palmer.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Say hello, buddies, right? So
another student of mine, right?
He called you Dr. Brown, so I thought he was a student maybe. So Dr. Brown, in your opinion, what is the best method in promoting social equity in rural, socially and geographically dispersed communities with limited resources and substantial hazards? Is this strictly local/county emergency management problem, or does it reach further?
No, our rural communities have been left out, and everyone will concentrate on the disproportionate, the environmental injustices and the disproportionate healthcare disparities that have been thrown upon persons of color in marginalized communities. But our people in West Virginia and our farmers in the farmlands and rural areas have also been left out. They too have been set aside and pushed aside. Jeremy, you use the term resources. That's the key. With what FEMA is trying to do now, I put to you that if you can get out there and help your community get a grant and get these grants to address some of the shortcomings and some of the things that are affecting the quality of life of your community, get the resources from FEMA and from some of their partners, such as Build Strong. If you can get these resources, then you're going to build the trust and you're going to get more collaboration and cooperation from that community, and everyone steps up. It's hard for a person to be a part of the whole community when they don't have good drinking water, or if they don't have a hospital. So we need to provide these things.
Thank you, Dr. Brown.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jeremy. Next question is from Julia Horben, who is also the chair of our online Masters of Science in Human Security and Resilience. So Julia says, thank you for this insightful presentation, and shared, echoed. The way we think about resilience is very often reactive. How do you think communities and governments can shift their approach to developing resilience preemptively? And you already kind of addressed that. Maybe you can, or started addressing that. Maybe you can expand on that just a little.
Public service announcements. We should be doing public service announcements. All across this country, there are communities that are addressing sea level rise, that are addressing drought, that are addressing flooding, using new ways and new approaches. We need to highlight them and let them share their stories, their processes. Why reinvent the wheel? Let them share these processes in a story-like manner through either FEMA or some other mechanism, so they can say, contact them. They have a similar situation. I'll give you an example. There's a group run by a wonderful young lady in Tennessee who is composting, and she's expanding the scale. Now farmers are getting involved in this composting, and it's yielding wonderful returns and protecting the environment. But no one knows the stories. We have to share the stories. The lifeblood of emergency management, the lifeblood of public health, of health, is communication. We got to get that message out there.
This is a great encouragement as we are considering an integrated undergraduate graduate program between Julia's program, which is the Masters in Human Security and Resilience, and our undergraduate Bachelor of Science in Communication. So thank you. So we take that as encouragement for our curricular endeavors as well. So, and Julia says thank you, and she cannot agree more. Perfect. Next question. Who wants to be next? Anything else? So my question always is, this national, I mean, obviously local, regional, national, the FSLT continuum, there's already a lot of divide in there. We need to overcome that, right? So, but then the national, international divide. And so what do you think, do you foresee that FEMA frameworks will that need to be elevated to be more internationalized? Because also, our communities in the United States may more and more depend on international support and help and volunteers as well. And then how to integrate that into our national frameworks. Do you see any, then IAEM comes to mind, but not only. So what is your perspective on that?
Well, the mere fact that the president brought about an executive order 14008, and one of the main things it says in that is that this is based on the threat from climate change nationally and domestically. No more needs to be said. So already the government has recognized we can't do it alone. when you use the term climate change, you're talking about controlling, and I apologize for that. When we're talking about climate-related issues or carbon issues, we're not alone. We're not by ourselves. A couple of people at that BRIC meeting also are responsible for a lot of what's going on with climate. So we have to be international. In today's world, because of the interdependencies and the transportation, international transportation, COVID didn't start here, it came here. So just like that, we have to have partners all over the world in order to ensure that there is true resilience within CONUS. We cannot sit by and say, okay, well, it's not our problem. Monroe Doctrine. No. It's our, the whole community not only doesn't stop at our borders, the whole community is everyone on this planet that's breathing air or drinking water. And that's the onus for all of us getting it right here and then sharing it with our partners. If they get it right there, share it with us. That's the only way this village will survive.
That's great. Thank you. And also we should recognize that not only is the federal government looking at that, but the definition of whole community has always included international partners, but that was not really reflected in the frameworks and then at the integration stage. So thank you. That is very helpful. Anything else? So since we have Michael here. Any disagreement, or is any?
I think Julia was raising her hand. Hey, Julia.
Oh, is she? Let's see. Let me see that I'm catching up with hands here. Yeah, Julia, if you want to, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Perfect.
I was curious, I think it's kind of question because of we developing the program in human security and resilience. What do you think are the skills? Yes, like if we are working on these shifts in how we think about resilience, what skills are required of new professionals, yes, to succeed in this field and develop responses that respond to current threats in our field?
Now, if you're talking about developing CLOs, or if you're talking, it sounds like you're talking about developing core learning objectives. And then you're going to break those down to unit learning objectives. If you're talking about core learning objectives, then that's going to take some thought. Because remember, if we're talking about resilience, every single profession or area needs resilience. If you're looking at a particular, let me ask you this, Julia, what particular course, give me the title of the course, and I'll give you an idea.
Conflict resolution in emergency management.
Okay, conflict resolution in emergency management. And now, okay, be specific, because if you're talking about conflict resolution, I'm conflict resolution with on a national scale, with borders, with immigration. Okay, see there. So we're talking about conflict resolution with regards to possible immigrations or people that are displaced. Right. That's a totally different and difficult can of worms here. If you're going to look at that as far as your skill sets or what you want to look at, what's your end game? Because we know that the immigration issue, we were just listening, where numerous people were killed coming across the border, Ethiopians trying to get into Saudi Arabia, and that was just pointed out. That's pretty much a conflict. The question is how you deal with that. Are you dealing with it as a NGO? Are you dealing with it as a member of the United Nations? So that's a very intricate thing, because the basic skills for resilience are going to pretty much remain the same. One, you got to keep a cool head. But when you're talking about developing core learning objectives for this, it could be anything from CISM, which is critical incident stress management, where you're going to have to understand that some of the people you're dealing with will have post-traumatic stress. So that really is a difficult topic. That's going to require sitting down with a beignet and some coffee and going, well, I don't know about it, really working it out.
I like the beignet idea. Yeah,
I thought so. Well, I've seen some of your posts.
missing New Orleans and ResCon. I'm sorry I couldn't make it this year, but hopefully next year.
Well, I'm quite an Epicurean myself. I love to cook, and even though I'm a rather small fellow, I love to eat.
It's important. When we did with FEMA Region 3 back in the days out of Philadelphia, a tabletop exercise back at Penn State, what's principle number 1? You can't have enough coffee, right?
That's
or you
right.
can't have too much coffee.
Well, I tell you what, I lived in southern Germany, in Stuttgart for years.
And you can't have too much beer, right? Was the motto there probably. No, I don't know. Just kidding.
Well, I can't because I'm allergic to wheat. Heavy bison. I found out from my lovely wife, Mike, you're allergic to wheat. You can't drink that wheat beer. And I'm like, that's why that kept happening. So.
Me as well, I can't take it. So so it helps. Like keeping a cool and clear head, right? So
right.
Hey, Julia, Julia, go ahead. So we are.
I just saw her cat. Yeah. I love your cat, Julia.
Just thank you. That's all I want to say. That's it.
Yeah. That's always the cats here always give us the time signal when the conversation goes astray. So thanks, cat. Appreciate that. So no, this is great. So, and we are also approaching the hour. So and a lot of participants here, Michael. Thank you for sharing your observations and thoughts and being frank about it. Which is important. Tracy is giving you a big hand, so and all of us can join, I think, there. So thank you. That's fantastic. Like we were saying in the chat, we were with your agreement, we would share your slide deck and the recording once edited by Brianna. We'll share that with all the participants. And I wanted to just point out our website of the Embry-Riddle Worldwide College of Arts and Sciences. If you want to learn more about us, if you want to stay in touch, receive updates, invitations for the next Resilience Reimagined occurrence and other things, you can also like and follow us on social media. And on our official website, top right, you have our new social media, not so new. I'm still an old guy, still call it new social media as it was referred to 20 years ago. So social media links without the new, not so new anymore. Thank you, Micah. Would you like to say anything before we close it out here?
Thank you. That's kind of you, because you remember I like to talk. So
I know you.
all I would like to say is earlier I was telling you, I want you to remember 2 things. Resilience starts with the individual. It starts with us. We can each be a change agent and transformative in our actions. Don't wait for someone to come help you, save you. Come up with the ideas, come out of the box and do it yourself. And the last thing is the greatest form of mitigation is what? Voting. Put people in that have your back. If they're not going to do what you want them to do, mitigate them. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
That's a great sack. Thank you so much, Michael, for presenting. Thanks everybody for coming, and I hope to see you all again soon on one or the other occasion here. So be safe, be good, and thanks again. You take care.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.